Every single business coach on the internet is telling you to build your personal brand and to go all in on content in order to scale your info coaching business in 2026. But nobody actually tells you how this works. They don't tell you what content to post, how to figure out what your personal brand is, as well as how to actually turn views into paying customers. And after gaining over 6 million followers for some of the biggest personal brands in the info coaching space, as well as generating over 100 million sales, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to break down the exact 5 steps that you need to go through to go from having absolutely no brand or no direction in terms of building your personal brand to being able to having a predictable source of content ideas that you can use to attract and convert your ideal clients into paying customers. Now, step number 1, and this is the one thing nobody talks about, you need to actually have a conclusive overview of your personal brand. Everyone believes that having a personal brand is just who you are as a person or the niche that you're operating in. And then either you just give a bunch of value in your niche or you just talk about a bunch of random stuff that you're interested in, and that's your personal brand. And then you just post as many times as possible, and that's how you magically make millions of dollars. And that's exactly why 99% of creators never really make any life-changing money, because you don't have an actual branding blueprint and an actual blueprint on how to use what they have in a unique way to appeal to their target demographic. So when it comes down to building your personal brand, what you want to go and have is you want to have 5 different things, okay? Number 1, you want to have your origin story. That's the first part of your personal brand. Now, your origin story is simply who you are, where you're from, sort of the journey that you've gone through, and last but not least, the transformation that you have. The reason this is so important is because it's the number 1 thing that not only makes you special, but also helps you to relate with your ICP. Now, in order to be able to craft a compelling origin story, you need a few elements. You need your backstory, you need your struggles / your breaking point. You need to understand sort of the vehicle discovery, how you came across the vehicle, diet, business model that you ultimately saw success in, the initial trials and errors that you kind of go through, as well as sort of the, light bulb moment where you're like, oh, this all just makes so much sense. The first win, as well as the entire journey to where you are today, right? If you can articulate your story from a place of this is how I started, where they can relate themselves to that position, and you understand the different levels and stages that you've gone through to go from, let's say, absolutely overweight to incredibly in shape. If you can explain that in a way where people have different points of relatability, whether that is, I understand the struggle or I understand the position you started in, that's when they get drawn into you because they feel like you are just like them, which is the number 1 thing you need. So the origin story is the most important thing, because if you tell your story the right way, people will be able to associate with yourself. I have 2 examples here. First things first, we have Mr. Iman. If you think of Iman, if you know anything about his story, you will think of single mom, grew up extremely poor, made it big using SMMA, and obviously now info products. Now, on the right side, you see Cody Sanchez, fairly known for buying businesses, but her story is ex-Goldman Sachs, extremely burnt out, buys boring business. That is who she is. And that makes her very unique. Again, the ex-Goldman Sachs angle, very unique for Iman. Single mom, struggling throughout school, didn't realize it was the right path for him. Those are angles and elements already that make him unique from other people. Now, again, that's just one part. The second thing is sort of like your USP. And this is where most people fail. Most people think, oh, this guy shows a Lamborghini. Let me show a Lamborghini. Wrong. What you want is you want a unique positioning, things that you've achieved that are fairly unique to your industry, where you're not just another carbon copy broccoli hat. So for example, a USP could be specific wins that you've accomplished, right? It could also be like trials and tribulations that you've gone through, like challenges you've overcome. It could be like lessons you've learned in terms of like inputs you've made, quantities done or whatever. And it's just elements that give you a form of authority. As an example, we had clients that are ex-JP Morgan, again, in the financial space that gives you immediate authority. Now, we had a client that sold his company for $30 million. Again, selling a company for that amount is incredibly good. We also had a client that set up property business in 3 different countries and 3 different continents, which again, if you set up over 400 doors across 3 continents, that is a unique level of accomplishment and sort of authority where people go, wow, I need to listen to what this person says. Now, we have 2 great examples here. Number 1 is Mr. Alex Hormozi. His USP is sort of like the $100 million man, aka he's like, hey, I sold my business, I made over $100 million. Now this whole book series is tied into that. So that is like his big claim. And at the time, nobody in the market had achieved that level of success, which is why he obviously stands out immediately. Now, on the right side, we have Miss Shelby Sapp. Now, if you know anything about her in the space, she's like the pink Porsche sales girl, right? She's the first girl to ever talk about like high ticket sales. She was very famous. She realized that the pink Porsche is like something people want and that nobody really flexed, right? And then just the whole aesthetic is how she really positioned herself and that nobody's been able to successfully respect. And so you got to ask yourself, oh, what about my life is kind of unique. Maybe it's like a life philosophy that you have. Maybe it is a certain accomplishment, certain challenges you've overcome. It can be as simple as like that by day, 8-figure business owner by night, like that type of stuff, where it's just like something about you and the things you've accomplished has to be standing out in order for people to take you serious. So that's good things, but it doesn't stop there. Number 3 is your expertise. I know a lot of people like to tell you that, oh, you know, I just want to be the niche. You are the niche. Don't become a niche hopper. I think that's the worst advice ever, because at the end of the day, for people to have the desire to go and say, wow, this person can help me overcome a specific problem, can help me achieve XYZ outcome, they need to know that you're actually capable and skilled in certain areas. And to me, the way I kind of look at it is you want to educate people on the step-by-step process that you have. You want to educate them on the industry insight that you've gained, as well as the personal experiences and sort of outcomes that you've been able to achieve. And for that, you need to really draw out your expertise. For the sake of being, let's say you're an Airbnb coach. You want to outline what is your strategy, how is that strategy different from everyone else, and what are some of the unique things that you do that set you aside. Because if you can clearly articulate something that ChatGPT doesn't already know, that's how you win. Generally speaking, the expertise value content space is pretty dead if ChatGPT can give people the same answer. But if you have unique insights and a unique process, a unique way of doing things that isn't just common knowledge, that's when people perceive you as a thought leader. And that's where value content is one of the strongest things. For you to be able to create that, you need to chart out what actually is your expertise. Now, once again, 2 great examples here. Mr. Jeremy Miner. If you look at his profile, the way he's positioned himself through his expertise is you immediately think of him as like, oh, he's a sales guy. He's a tonality guy. And then on the right side, we have Mr. Jeremy Haynes, which you know he's like the Facebook ads $1 million a month guy, because they've very much clearly made it, this is my expertise and this is what I'm talking about. And so I said, again, they combine different elements here. As you can see here, Jeremy's made his unique positioning through essentially like, hey, I'm the $1 million a month guy, right? And then the unique expertise is through Facebook ads. And then he uses his origin story, how he gotten into that space, and articulates why he believes certain things he does because of his origin story. So they're all playing together. And then last but not least, and this is the part that most people do not at all or do the wrong way, is your opinions and your personality. At the end of the day, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And the easiest way for someone to get to know and trust you is for them to understand who you are as a person and where you stand. Most personal brands make this thing where they're trying to be super vanilla and kind of sit on the fence because they're worried that if they position themselves on one side of the fence, that the other side of the fence will discriminate, which is true, but that's the exact thing you want. As an example, we have clients that are extremely conservative, and when they try to be like, oh, I don't want to be political, we force them to, because the moment you take a stance, the people that you're targeting, right, if that aligns with them, they're gonna be like, heck yeah, I agree with that person on XYZ topic, or that person has the same belief as me about, you know, whatever topic, and therefore I believe that this person's right fit for me. Imagine there's 2 coaches that you're trying to look at. Coach number 1 is very knowledgeable, but you don't know anything about him. Coach number 2 is probably equally as knowledgeable, but he gives you very blunt opinions. You know exactly where that person stands on the political spectrum. You also understand what that person thinks about the concept of mindset. You know what they think about different ways to grow a business. Who do you now think are you more likely to buy from? AKA, where do you feel like you have more trust that they are aligned with what you like and what your preferences are? Well, probably quote person number 2 over here. It's because they share their opinions. So the things that you want to chart out for your personal brand is you want to chart out what are your beliefs and values, what are opinions you hold about the broader things in life that are relevant to your ICP, as well as the industry beliefs. And then last but not least, you want to look at how you perceive the world, what are your opinions about global topics relevant to your ICP, and immediately react to them. As an example, whenever Trump announced the big beautiful bill, we immediately went and made multiple pieces of content for our clients about it, because we knew this is the type of stuff their ICP actually cares about. And, you know, give or take, we had about 3 to 4 videos that get over 1 million views because we understood, oh, this is relevant to the ICP. It's a global topic, which means it's going to get a lot of views. Plus, if we position it properly, people will give a shit about our opportunity. They will believe that it is actually the right thing for them. And they will believe that our client is the right person for it because they agree with his view on that particular matter. And so when you look at these 2 people, right? Sneako, you probably think immediately about some of his more controversial sentences around like politics, as well as men and female relationships. And then this person here, if you know him, he talks a lot about like tuxedos, super anti-vegan, like big proponent of like eating meat. And so essentially like that's really what you want. At the end, when you map out your personal brand, you want to understand, okay, cool. What is the journey that I want to share that shows how essentially my vehicle was the bridge between my old self and my current self, which is where the transformation happened, where the viewer thinks, oh, this vehicle actually allowed him to make this transformation. You then want to go and have like a USP, right? A unique sales proposition, aka a unique positioning mechanism. You know, you can do that through wins, losses, and lessons. And so then what you want is you want to chart out your expertise, where you can underline or justify almost your positioning through your expertise, as well as the things you've done. And then last but not least, you want to add out your personality and angles you can go and use to attract people, as well as like nurture them, because people buy from people they know, like, and trust, for the second time in this video. And you really want to hone that in. Most people, they only do one thing. They just go and focus on, I just want people to trust me because I give so much value. Some people be like, I just want them to like me and think I'm a cool person and like, yay, I'm super hip. You got to do all three of them. People are going to get to know you by understanding your story and how you went from A to B and why they can relate to you. They're going to trust you by understanding that you know your shit. You're a tactically smart person, and they're going to like you because they're the type of person I want to be like. And so once you have that, that is step one completed. And that gives you your branding blueprint. Now, heading over into step two, what do you want to do now that you have a broad overview? You want to come up with a content strategy. Most people, when they come down to you doing content, they just think that let me spam a bunch of reels, let me post 5 times a day, get 1 million views, and money will massively appear. But sadly enough, manifestation doesn't quite work like that. When it comes to content as a funnel, you got to think of it as a funnel extremely strategically. So as you can see, the way I look at content is very similar to a funnel. I want to have top of funnel, where essentially I share my story, I share some big accomplishments, I drop, my vehicle as a new opportunity, I break down the opinions, views that I hold, and I ultimately just want to create awareness of who I am, what I do, and why it is relevant to my ICP. And then once those people actually are aware of me, in the middle of the funnel, I want to do through a combination of feed and story content, I want to create a relationship. I want to create trust by sharing case studies. I want to create a likelihood by sharing some personal views, what I'm doing behind the scenes. Ultimately, I want to create more trust and awareness by educating them on how I do things, why I do them, how successful I'm doing them. And once I have at the level where they know, like, and trust me, the way I now at the bottom of the funnel turn them into leads is by either telling them directly, hey, if you want to achieve XYZ transformation or a specific outcome, you need to come and comment a keyword. Or I tell them, hey, I have this lead magnet, this super valuable resource. If you message me, then I can send it over to you. And so again, this whole thing has to be very strategically, where you're aware of what you're posting and the immediate impact that it has. Whereas if you're just posting for shits and giggles, you never truly understand how someone turns from a stranger into a converting customer. Now, when it comes to the content strategy, this is fairly simple. There's this principle that I have, which is called like the 3-circle principle. And I believe that good personal brands are not just a one-trick pony where there's like one thing that you're interested in, but you have multiple sort of like interests. But I don't want to have too many. What I want is I want 3 topics that are somewhat interjoined that allow me to reach the most amount of people. Now, let's take the topic of Airbnb as an example, right? If you just solely focus on Airbnb and that was your whole thing, your total addressable market would be fairly small because only a handful of people know about Airbnb. But people that are interested in Airbnb most likely are also interested in real estate, and vice versa. People who are interested in real estate would probably take an interest in Airbnb as a specific real estate vehicle. So what we want to do is we want to create content around Airbnb, tactical guides, tutorials, showing behind the scenes of how you set up a property. But in the same realm, you want to make real estate based content. So that could be comparisons between an Airbnb and a traditional real estate. It could be talking about how you're buying houses or like how you're going around certain real estate restrictions. And then last but not least, I want to figure out, okay, cool, now that I've kind of broadened it, Airbnb might be like a 3 out of 10 total addressable market. Real estate might be like a 5 or 6. How do I get like an 8 or 10 out of 10 addressable market without it being random? The thing is, I look at finances, for example, because that's like an entire industry / sector. People who care about like financial intelligence or sort of financial knowledge in the first place, they're the type of people that realize, owning real estate or getting involved with real estate is a great deal. And so essentially what I want to do is I want to have one interest that is essentially my niche and what I do. One is an extended sort of like industry of my niche. And the last is like an overarching like big category. But here's the thing. People believe that when they start creating content, they need to immediately go for the big content. They need to talk about mindset. They need to talk about mentorship. They need to talk about these big, broad sort of like topics, but that's where they're going wrong. People don't give a shit about what you say about broad topics unless they have context as to why it's worth listening to you about. So when you look at Eman, the reason people cared about his self-development stuff is because they already knew he was successful because he had such a niche and sort of like tight agency following that when he spoke about broader topics, they were like, well, he's helped us here and like we understand he's good and he's rich, therefore we care about the broader topics. So he's able to expand. When Hormozi started to do more broad content, it was justified because at this hardcore core of gym owners that were like, he knows what he's talking about and he's giving us so much value, we want to watch that too. And that's how you broaden your reach, because obviously within the algorithm that gets pushed. So same thing here. You want to make sure that you gain authority within the Airbnb market. So when you talk about real estate topics, you still have a chance to get those people engaged. And last but not least, reversely, if you get established, you want to talk about financial topics, because if they support you throughout, this will blow up and then all of a sudden the awareness of who you are massively spreads. And so you really want to figure out 3 topics that are related. What you don't want is you don't want to put in these random random topics that, number one, are not congruent with your niche or sort of like the vehicle you're selling, or number two, your ICP is no interested in. If I sell an e-com course, me talking about my gardening project is probably going to be a pretty bad example because you get a gardening crowd and now you try to sell them onto e-com dropshipping, and I just don't see that being very congruent. Now, when we move away from topics, once you know what topics you're creating with, you want to figure out the formats. Now, formats, it seems to be very underrated, but you want to figure out how visually your brand comes across. Generally speaking, I like to pick two sort of categories of formats, which are Reels and Threads. Now, the way this works is Reels are used to get awareness because they get pushed to non-followers first and then to your followers. And so Reels are really the topics you want to do to gain awareness and to grow your following. Whereas Threads or carousels on the other side, they get pushed to non-followers first and then they actually come back and get shown to your non-followers, right? So once your followers engage with it and it does well, then it gets pushed to new people. And so they are great as a nurture/conversion mechanism. So I want to pick, Reels format that I'm going to go and use to get new followers and kind of broaden my awareness of my brand. And then carousel/threads to actually like nurture and convert those people. Now, as you can see, there's dozens of formats. And what I like to do is I like to pick 2 to 3 Reels formats and 1 to 2 carousel formats. And I just like to test them because over a short period of time, I will see which formats do I feel the most comfortable in creating and which ones actually appeal the most to my ICP. And once I figure that out, I eliminate the losing formats and I just add in a second format to test. And then within 2 to 3 attempts of testing, right, with like a 2-to-1 split, that's when I will be able to actually identify what works. Now, once I find the winning format, I will be immediately able to tell, okay, this works, this doesn't. I remove and abandon the losing formats and I add in one more new format. I test it at a 2-to-1 ratio, so 2 of the winning format, 1 of the new format. And after 2 to 4 videos, I should be able to tell if this should be continued. And then I can reiterate from there. That's how I also drive innovations, but I develop a clear-cut brand image. Because at the end of the day, you don't just want to be a copycat. You want to feel like you have a unique brand because that ultimately helps you sort of stand out. Now, essentially, once you have that, one of the last parts of your content strategy is distribution and frequency. I keep this super simple. On my feed, I want to post 5 times to 7 times a week, which is once a day. I want to post 5 reels a week, which can either be these B-roll type reels or like some talking head reels, one of the two, and then 1 or 2 threads/carousels every single week. And then that is kind of how I attract and nurture people. And then realistically, what I want is I want about 5 to 6 story sequences every single week. 2 of them could just be like tactical, like a tutorial that you can see here. One has to be like social proof where I share like results and stuff like that. One sequence I want to do like a vlog or like just like sort of like tell stories that happen in everyday life so they feel like, oh, this person's like really showing me the insides of their life. And then besides that, you want to do at least one Q&A, which is like, hey, ask me questions, I'll respond, or a direct response story. And last but not least, sort of like a story where you just give a life update or just take them behind the scenes. Because if people can see what you are doing and they see you're actively pursuing the vehicle you're trying to sell them on, that's when they build immense trust because they understand, oh, this person's actually doing this shit. And so once you have those things together, that's when you have like a conclusive content strategy, right? You should now understand, okay, cool. Well, how am I going to go and attract people? Great. How am I going to go and nurture these people? And then last but not least, how do I turn these people into potential customers? Great. Now, the one thing that from there goes is once you get the organic stuff dialed in, you actually can ask yourself, how can I now grow the audience? Most people start with the wrong thing. They're like, how can I get a lot of followers? And then they worry about like, oh, how do I create good content? It's really the reverse. You can get followers, but they're the wrong ones, which means they won't engage with your content. Or you can post really good content, attract a few followers, but they'll actually convert because the type of followers that follow you give a shit about what you're talking about. So to me, I'm a big component of validating organically, scaling and amplifying afterwards, right? So there's 2 ways in which you can grow your personal brand in 2026. Number 1 is obviously organically. Within organically, there's 2 ways. Number 1 is just your reels. Simply put, you just post high quality reels that talk about your story, that talk about your vehicle, as well as your personal beliefs hide into the vehicle. That will give you broad market appeal and can actually reach, 1 million plus people, which is how you grow the audience. And then number 2, on the organic side, you can go and grow it using trial reels. Trial reels are awesome is because it allows you to split test different types of reels and actually just distribute it to non-followers, which means your followers don't see the video unless you make it onto your feed, and you just get to reach a bunch of new people. And if you do it properly, then the right people will respond to that reel, and then you can gradually grow your audience for more or less free, because the same video you post on your feed, you actually post on trial reels, which is pretty awesome. Now, once you get that dialed in, you get some organic growth out. You want to amplify it using a few methods. Based on size that you're at, the revenue that you're generating, you can invest in mechanisms such as Instagram shoutouts, where you basically have big theme pages like faceless Instagram pages, repost your posts onto their page and promote your profile. Or you can do collab posts where, again, you pay the same type of influencers or peers in your industry to collab on a post with you. Meaning when you post, you add them into collaborator, and now their reach of their audience gets sent to your profile as well. And last but not least, Instagram followers. Instagram follower ads are actually super effective, especially if you target a more narrow or niche demographic, because you get to expose your content directly to your ICP through Instagram's targeting mechanism, which is pretty good. But there's reasons why for us, we love and prefer Instagram shoutouts and collab. Now, that again, you need to go through the organic validation of, okay, cool, how can I validate this process of getting organic followers in? But then once you have that, you might want to go, cool, which of those methods makes the most sense so that I understand, okay, cool, the math becomes fairly simple. If I spend $100, how many followers do I get? And off of those followers, how many leads do I get? And then how many calls do I book, right? And then what's cash collected? And then off of there, over a 30 to 60 day period, which is what I recommend, you'll be able to check what is the ROI or the ROAS. So now you're really able to treat it like a funnel, where if you post 30 times a month, how many leads are you generating? If you spend, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 a month on follower ads, shout outs, or collabs, how many people are you getting in? How many leads are you generating? And then you get to optimize each individual element, which that drives us to the big question. How do you actually generate leads? Which is step number 4. Most people do this the wrong way, to be fair. They just do one way, which is why I don't believe most people make as much money as they could. But let me break it down for you. When it comes down to lead generation, there's 2 elements. There's your Instagram bio, and then there's feed and / story generation. On the bio side, there's 2 ways in which we generate it. Okay, number 1, in the bio, the 3rd line, we always have a CTA. Now that's either a direct CTA, DM me X keyword to learn more, or an indirect CTA, which is, hey, DM me this keyword to get XYZ resource. I prefer the second part because essentially you give value. So, hey, message me and I will send you a specific free resource, which to most people seems extremely valuable. Now, number 2, we always have a link in bio. I used to be pretty against it. Essentially, we had a client that had a link in his bio, which led to a webinar, which he did 2 times a week. And, we kind of left it there for a month. We're like, oh, let's just test it. The client asked us to leave it there because he's like, oh, we need a lot more registered. And so at that time, we had a few good performing posts, we got a bunch of traffic. And at the end of the month, through Hyros, we realized that the link in bio has generated over $100,000, which, was simply from Instagram content / traffic going onto the page, probably not being able to consume content or not really wanting to. They're just like, oh, this link looked interesting. They sign up for a webinar and boom, next thing they know, they're piffing 10K or 5K, for the client's product. And so what we like to do is we like to support people that are lazy and just want to click a link, or people that are more skeptical, they want to chat to someone or feel like they're chatting to the business owner. And so that's why we always have 2 CTAs in here. And then the second thing is on your feed. So either on your feed, you want to do what's like here, for example, on the last slide of your carousel or the last few seconds of your reel, you want to tell someone to comment a keyword to get a resource or to DM you to learn more. And then number 2, on the stories, what you want to do is you want to actually do an actual promo. Hey, look, here's what you're going to get. What's the program entail? And then basically hey, DM me this word and then we'll chat. And this is where it gets interesting. From here, every single person we want to drive either into a webinar or a VSL funnel, one of the things, but there's just link in bio. And then everything else, every single person that we're not driving from the link in bio to a webinar or a VSL, I want to drive into the DMs. Here's why. I personally believe the DM funnel to be one of the most lucrative funnels if done properly, because people think they're speaking to yourself. So they get to know, like, and trust you. You get to have unlimited contact points because again, you can follow up with people as many times as you want, right? Number 3, if people message you and you get them into ManyChat, which is a software that you can use to chat with leads, you can literally go and broadcast to them. So you can literally spam end of month messages or webinar reminders if need be. And so the way we convert people is fairly straightforward. So first things first, whenever they send us in a DM, we want to immediately qualify leads. I hard qualify in the first few questions based on location, right? Are they US or outside? Do they come from non-buyer demographics? And number 2, just kind of check if they fit the box. Are they the type of person we want to work with? Down the line as well, are they financially qualified? I just want to check if they're a good fit. If they are a good fit and we're oh, they're actually a qualified lead, right? We immediately push them to book a call. Now, once they book a call, we take them to a pre-call process, which that's a separate video in of itself. And from there, we try to push them into the core offer. And if we can't convince them to go buy the core offer, we then push them into a downsell. So we focus on maximizing cash. Now, if people are disqualified, what we usually do is we just do one of 2 things. We essentially go and say, hey, cool, that makes complete sense. I don't think you'd be the best fit right now, but I have this free training that might give you some more context. Boom. We send them to the VSL / webinar. And from there, we send them either to a type form. And if the type form tells them that they're disqualified as well, then we sell them to a downsell offer, which is just a little 15-minute VSL and then pitch the product. But most people, you'd actually be surprised how many people lie inside of the DMs or even on some of the application forms. But when they after the VSL or after the webinar, they give us a positive answer on like their financials, we immediately book them onto a sales call, which now again, it allows us to essentially like maximize our cash flow. And then that's pretty much when they get sold. But if people actually attend the downsell and they buy it, we actually offer them an upgrade call. It's a super simple thought process. Is we want them to feel like, oh, I get a free onboarding call, whatever it is. And on the upgrade call, we can actually check if they just lied to us and tried to get a cheap offer, and we can upsell them from there. But the entirety of this funnel is extremely simple. There's not much friction here. Again, it's literally like DM setter, phone call. And then if they don't buy, we just go via sell type form. And then again, it's like max 3 components, where some of them are like, oh, I need this funnel and then this email sequence and then this SDR. Like, we like to eliminate complexity and we like to increase the personalization of touch points, because that's ultimately what people buy into. And so the call booking process, it's a bit more in depth. Once they book a call with us, we want to ensure that they consume resources. The whole premise is that when they show up to the call, they should be sold on 3 things. The creator being the right type of person, a relatable figure. So they're actually aware that, yes, I want to learn from that person. Number 2, they should be aware that like this opportunity is awesome and I can see how the opportunity will take me from where I am to where I want to go. And number 3, they believe that this opportunity is simple enough to where they can see success, or they've seen people like themselves succeed, which is why they want to work in the first place. And so again, you need to have those 5 systems. You need to go and have to round this out. You need to have a personal branding blueprint where you're aware of, oh, what makes me special? How can I attract, nurture, and convert people? And what is my story and my personality? So you actually understand what are your strengths and weaknesses and how can you play into them. Number 2, you need to have an actual content strategy. Again, you want to treat your content like the paid ads funnel. You're aware of exactly what to post to attract, nurture, and convert people in a predictable manner. Now, once you have that, you want to now have amplification. You want to understand, what do I do every single day to grow my audience? So I post every day, but on top of that, what do I do to amplify that post and make the most amount of money out of that? Again, and once you get followers, how do you turn them into leads? And when they turn leads, how do you predictably turn them from strangers who don't know who the fuck you are and what you do into qualified buyers that have high intent of actually purchasing your offer? And that is exactly the entire system. And I know this was probably a bit of a longer video, but this is the very essence that it takes to build a profitable personal brand in 2026. Now, with that being said, I hope you got a ton of value out of this. If you want that system and all the SOPs, streamlined templates, and just hands-on advice from myself and my team on how to implement this for your business, then feel free to click the link below and we'll chat, see if we can actually help. Again, we've done this for so long. We've been in the game for 5 years, so we know exactly how to do this across over 20 niches at this point. Or if you're just waiting on, hey, how can I actually implement this? Then feel free to like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm dropping 2 videos a week, just sharing everything I've learned in the last 2 weeks and things we're learning as we kind of grow our companies and scale clients up to hopefully 500K, million, 2 million plus a month. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next one.